Next we have Nancy that's going to come up and give us an update on the Costa-Hawkins repeal. And she's going to take about a minute and a half to do so.
There are a couple updates, one of which is that there's a new petition going around, Nancy has it right here, to repeal the Costa-Hawkins bill. If you remember, we worked on that last year, and it is to try to enable us to get rent control back and stabilized. So that's what this petition is about, and you want to pass around and have to come to you.
Yeah, I didn't know how, did you want me to pass it around, or if you want to come up to me later, we should do it.
Just pass it around, start here and pass it around.
Okay, I just didn't want to be disruptive. It's to get it back for 2020. So we need to get signatures. So we're starting early, so we get enough signatures to qualify it for next year for 2020. So this is really important, because we're not giving up.
You have to be a registered voter to sign.
Yeah, you're registered to vote. If you're in a different county, I don't know anybody in that county other than LA County, like Ventura, or you're all, there's one in Orange County. What I have, huh?
No, I was just thinking if there's anybody in that.
Okay, so everybody here is like LA County, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good, because if somebody's from a different county, I have different sheets. It has to be all county by county. Otherwise, I'll cross it off. So I'll put, this is LA County, and then if you fill up the sheet, you can go on to the next sheet. It's the same one. You just fold down to read and flip up to sign. And then just make sure, you know, as long as you're registered to vote at the address that you're currently living. If you moved, you know, then it wouldn't be. So it's are you registered to vote? And then also, you're registered to vote at your current address. So they're real nitpicky because they check validity. So.
I know they do. So yeah, just pass it around, and if you haven't signed it yet and you care about rent control, fill it out. Also, I'm going to ask Bob to tell you about the next meeting of the Committee for Racial Justice book group.
Have you signed anything this year? No. Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Bob Ford. I'm a member of the steering committee of CRJ. One of the things that we do is to operate a book club. The book club meets once a month, and the book we are currently reading and discussing is by Beverly Tatum. It's called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the School Cafeteria? And other conversations about race. And at our next session, we will finish our discussion of that book. That will be on Saturday, August 24th, in the morning from 10 to 12. If you're interested in going to see me, I'll send you the address and put you on our mailing list. Let's see. That's about it. We'll also be deciding on what our next book will be. Okay.
And Trudy was just telling me that Kimberly has a new venture that is part of the POP program of Santa Monica. I don't know if you all know about that, but the city has been giving out grants to folks to help kind of grassroots start a new business. And so if you, Kimberly, if you want to come up and say something about it, just a couple words. It comes up periodically. You have to kind of watch the newspapers to see when they open up a new round of grants. It's helpful to some people.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kimberly Heron. Can you guys hear me better? My name is Kimberly Heron. I have been a Santa Monica resident for 23 plus years. And just recently, the city held what is called a micro grant. And it's basically ideas to bring to the city or possibly what the city lacks. So mine is a pop-up beauty supply store for African American and people of color, because we have never had a beauty supply store in Santa Monica. And I'm super excited about it. It's September the 28th, right here in the Military Building, where we are now. And it's actually making history in 2 different ways. For one, they've never had one here. For two, from my understanding, the Military Building has never allowed anyone to sell anything from this room. So again, I'm super excited, and we're working very hard to bring it together. It's more about the experience and a lot of history of the hairstyles and where they originally came from. So please come out and show your support. Thank you.
So we have some agreements that we agree to nowadays, and they're very important. So I want you to let me know if you agree with these. So you'll only speak when you're called on. If you agree with that, raise your hand. Is your neighbor raising their hand? Okay. If you only take a movie, if one of the steering committee members says it's okay, raise your hand if you agree with that. And everybody, a video. You only take a video if a member of the steering committee says it's okay. All right, and you're only going to, do you agree to only wear a face mask if we know who you are? Okay, all right. And you agree that you're here because you want to learn about reparations? All right, thank you very much. Oh, so I have the pleasure to introduce a couple of folks that you may have seen around here sometime. Trudy Gord is a member of the steering committee for the Committee for Racial Justice. She's also a Black Panther, and she's also a member of many other groups. She's basically an activist that gets things done. Her husband, Bob Gord, is also a heavy-duty activist, a member of the steering committee, and he is an avid reader. If you ever want to know what a book is about, ask Bob. If he hasn't read it, he'll read it and then tell you what it's about, and have questions. And so I'm sure that that they have a lot of things to tell us about reparations. They've both been studying this for a very long time, and Bob has actually done a couple of programs here. If you've been here around for a while, you've heard some of it before. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you folks for coming out. This is really impressive that the West Side is interested in finding out more about reparations and maybe the impacts that it could have on us as residents, both black, white, brown, and so forth. So tonight, Bob and I are going to go through a brief PowerPoint presentation on the topic. And yes, Craig Ali will be a part of that. And then we're very fortunate tonight to have Dr. David Horn, who is a retired tenured professor from Cal State Northridge, and who works with an organization for over 20-some years on reparations. So let me go ahead and advance this so we can get started. So as many of you saw a couple of weeks ago, or yeah, it's been about a week ago, we had a congressional hearing on reparations. And so this conversation has become part of a national dialogue, asking the question whether or not Black Americans are entitled to reparations as compensation for enslavement, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and a host of other crimes against humanity. So for many years, John Conyers, House of Rep member John Conyers, has asked Congress over and over again to study the idea, not pass a law that says that the United States will give reparations, but just to study the idea. And so this year on Juneteenth, and all y'all know what Juneteenth is because we done talked about Juneteenth enough, and we have this young woman here, Laverne, who puts on a program in the park every single year on Juneteenth. So this year, June 19th, the House once again heard testimony from folks that support the study as well as folks who do not. So tonight, we want to look at that topic. We want to ask the question from both sides, whether or not, Janet, that was one of the agreements that you did not mention. We're going to silence our phones so that we're not interrupting the speakers. So tonight we're going to look at both sides of that issue. And at the end, we want feedback from y'all to discuss further what we think about reparations for Black Americans. And now I'm going to introduce Bob, who will carry forth this program.
Okay. Let's just say this in the interest of transparency. Although it's true that we will look at both sides of the issue, I do not present myself as a neutral, sort of mediator. We'll take a look at both sides, but it's not as if I'm not going to make any pretense of trying to act as if I see both sides as equally well-founded. I think that will come out. So I just wanted you to know I'm not trying to fool you or anything. But I do want to start just with first with an analogy and then with a distinction. Okay. Black people who are demanding reparations are to the American people as the plaintiff is to the defendant in a lawsuit. Now, that's just an analogy. I'm not suggesting that the main way of gaining reparations will be through the courts, which I don't think is the case. But it's as if Black people are suing the U.S. government, right? It's as if that's happening. So, Black people and their comrades are the plaintiffs, and they are suing the American people, the American government, however you want to put it. You might sort of say white America, basically. And they are the defendant, right? Okay, so if we follow out that, so we can distinguish between the perspective of the plaintiff and the perspective of the defendant, right? Okay, now, here are some of the common points that are made to sort of, this is sort of the anti-reparation side, and often the arguments are very, like one sentence, or even rhetorical questions. People just brush off the topic. Reparations, how are we going to pay for that? End of discussion. I didn't own slaves, so why should I have to pay? Slavery was over a long time ago. Haven't Black people had plenty of time and opportunity to improve their stations in life by now? Reparations would encourage black people to expect handouts. You know, it would turn them into these passive victims who are just expecting to be given something. And this would actually hurt them. You know, this would hurt their character. It would take away from their work ethic. So we wouldn't want to do that to them. What a nice person this is to care so much. Okay. Reparations are about the past. Our society should concentrate on building a better future. You know, so get over it. You know, let's move into the future and forget about stuff that happened all those years ago. Of course, it's going to turn out that some of those things are still happening right now, but the people who think this way don't really pay much attention to that. Okay, now, a quiz. Those arguments, if you can call them arguments, from what point of view were they presented? From which perspective?
Mitch McConnell.
Weren't they very much from the perspective of the defendant? Yeah. Like, they're very defensive. Like, I don't want to be bothered by this. You know, I can't think about how we get the money together or the wrongs that have happened in the past. You know, they're very sort of evasive. Okay. But now we're going to take a look at some of the grievance, just a very partial list of, and this could be books, you know, full, but we'll have a partial list of the grievances that very well could be put forward on behalf of the defendant, from the perspective of the defendant. Not the defendants, but the plaintiff. The plaintiff, right?
No.
Yeah.
Is it?
The plaintiff is suing the other side.
Okay.
Oh, we've got a little video first.
Yeah.
Okay, that will be after the video. Okay, let's see what you think of this.
There are serious questions about this from all sides.
See where he's coming from.
Honest and sincere questions that we want to get. But putting aside the injustice of reparations from current taxpayers for the sins of a small subset of Americans from many generations ago, let me finish. The fair distribution of reparations would be nearly impossible once one considers the complexity of the American struggle to abolish slavery. We have an obligation to acknowledge that any monetary reparations that might be recommended by the commission created by H.R. 40 would almost certainly be unconstitutional on their face. The reason for that, listen, wait a minute. The reason for that is a legal question. The legal question is, the federal government can't constitutionally provide compensation today to a specific racial group because other members of that group, maybe several generations ago, were discriminated against and treated inhumanely. I think that's a good.
Okay. Now that was a small part of the Senator Jones?
He's a representative.
Yeah, he's a congressman.
Congressman, yeah, not a senator, but a congressman.
Mike Jones.
Mike Jones.
Mike Johnson.
No, it's Jones from Louisiana.
Okay.
It's Mike Jones.
Could you do closed caption?
Mike.
Yeah.
You couldn't hear him back there.
Okay, we can play it again, Edward, and just turn up the sound.
Okay.
How's that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it's very brief, so we'll do it again.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's see if we can. And,
Slaves.
Is that better?
There are serious questions about this from all sides of the political spectrum, and they're honest and sincere questions that we want to address. But
sorry.
As long as we have the sound.
Okay, you know what, we might be
Do the sound.
What's that?
Can you just do the sound?
Can you just do the sound?
Okay, let's just hear it. We already saw him talking, so.
There are serious questions about this from all sides of the political spectrum, and they're honest and sincere questions that we want to address. But putting aside the injustice of monetary reparations from current taxpayers for the sins of a small subset of Americans from many generations ago, let me finish. The fair distribution of reparations would be nearly impossible once one considers the complexity of the American struggle to abolish slavery. We have an obligation to acknowledge that any monetary reparations that might be recommended by the commission created by H.R. 40 would almost certainly be unconstitutional on their face. The reason for that, listen, wait a minute. The reason for that is a legal question. See, the legal question is, the federal government can't constitutionally provide compensation today to a specific racial group because other members of that group, maybe several generations ago, were discriminated against and treated inhumanely.
I sit here as a great-grandson.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. We okay, Trudy?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so just from that, from what perspective was that testimony given? Pretty obviously. From the perspective of the defendant, right? And there's almost a sense of, gosh, this is just too much trouble, you know? So complex and everything. Okay. Now,
Even illegal.
yeah, and even if they're illegal, and of course we couldn't change the laws or anything like that. Now, Craig is going to read you a partial list, because the list could be much longer, but a sampling of the kinds of grievances that could be made from the perspective of the plaintiff. And see what you think is stronger. Okay?
Almost 250 years of enslavement in English-speaking America. $1 trillion worth of unpaid labor. Enormous income from selling enslaved people as commodities, often resulting in breaking up of families of enslaved people. Physical and psychological torture. Horrendous levels of rape and sexual abuse. Premature end of Reconstruction. Failure of state and national governments to grant land to freed slaves, black codes, convict leasing system, Jim Crow system in the South, disenfranchisement of black voters, sharecropping, lynching, and other acts of terrorism, the Great Migration, pervasive exclusion of black workers from labor unions, radically unequal education for blacks and whites, segregation of the federal government under Woodrow Wilson, anti-black race riots in numerous cities circa 1920, Tulsa, Oklahoma especially, sundown towns all over the country in which a black person could not be present after sundown. Job discrimination, housing discrimination, supported and even increased by state, local, and national government. Prevalent in all parts of the U.S., blacks is almost entirely excluded from government-subsidized opportunities provided to whites to own their own homes, thus accumulating inheritable wealth. Join the middle class during the middle decades of the 20th century. Frequent use of mob violence. By whites to frequent use of mob violence by whites to keep white communities white. School desegregation mandated by Brown decision largely fails due to willful resistance and neighborhood segregation. Racist backlash against many of the achievements of civil rights movements are heavily resisted and undermined and thwarted. Assassination of many black leaders. Crack epidemic begins with the help of the CIA. Disproportionate number of blacks losing homes purchased with subprime loans. Black neighborhoods decimated by gentrification, urban renewal, and the building of freeways, mainly to serve white commuters. Mass incarceration. Disproportionate numbers of black people being killed by police. Poor health and lower life expectancies for blacks than for whites.
Okay. Thanks so much, Craig. And now we'll see a clip of someone more in tune with this perspective, and that is the great writer Ta-Nehisi Coates, also testifying before Congress.
Hoping I can get it.
When asked about reparations,
Yeah, I know. What happened?
America should not be alive for something that happened 150 years ago. None of us are going to be alive for this one.
Sorry, it's like a weak signal from the city's Wi-Fi to you.
Yesterday, when I
Let's see if I can get this.
yesterday, when I asked them,
Well, maybe we can just hear what Ta-Nehisi Coates has to say about it and move the program along. So,
So will we hear?
about reparations, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell offered a familiar reply. America should not be held liable for something that happened 150 years ago, since none of us currently alive are responsible. This rebuttal proffers a strange theory of governance, that American accounts are somehow bound by the lifetime of its generations. But well into this century, the United States was still paying out pensions to the heirs of Civil War soldiers. We honored treaties that date back some 200 years, despite no one being alive who signed those treaties.
Many of us would love to be taxed for the things we are solely and individually responsible for. But we are American citizens, and thus bound to a collective enterprise that extends beyond our individual and personal reach. It would seem ridiculous to dispute invocations of the founders or the greatest generation on the basis of a lack of membership in either group. We recognize our lineage as a generational trust, as inheritance. And the real dilemma posed by reparations is just that, a dilemma of inheritance. It is impossible to imagine America without the inheritance of slavery. As historian Ed Baptist has written, enslavement, quote, shaped every crucial aspect of the economy and politics of America, so that by 1836, more than 600 million, or almost half of the economic activity in the United States derived directly or indirectly from the cotton produced by the million-odd slaves. By the time the enslaved were emancipated, they comprised the largest single asset in America. $3 billion in $1860, more than all the other assets in the country combined. The method of cultivating this asset was neither gentle cajoling nor persuasion, but torture, rape, and child trafficking. Enslavement reigned for 250 years on these shores. When it ended, this country could have extended its hallowed principles, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to all regardless of color. But America had other principles in mind. And so for a century after the Civil War, black people were subjected to a relentless campaign of terror, a campaign that extended well into the lifetime of Majority Leader McConnell. It is tempting to divorce this modern campaign of terror, of plunder, from enslavement. But the logic of enslavement, of white supremacy, respects no such borders. And the god of bondage was lustful and begat many heirs, coup d'etats and convict leasing, vagrancy laws and debt peonage, redlining and racist GI bills, poll taxes and state-sponsored terrorism. We grant that Mr. McConnell was not alive for Appomattox, but he was alive for the electrocution of George Stinney. He was alive for the blinding of Isaac Woodward. He was alive to witness kleptocracy in his native Alabama and a regime premised on electoral theft. Majority Leader McConnell cited civil rights legislation yesterday, as well he should, because he was alive to witness the harassment, jailing, and betrayal of those responsible for that legislation by a government sworn to protect them. He was alive for the redlining of Chicago and the looting of black homeowners of some $4 billion. Victims of that plunder are very much alive today. I am sure they'd love a word with the Majority Leader. What they know, what this committee must know, is that while emancipation deadbolted the door against the bandits of America, Jim Crow wedged the windows wide open. And that is the thing about Senator McConnell's something. It was 150 years ago, and it was right now. The typical black family in this country has 1/10 the wealth of the typical white family. Black women die in childbirth at 4 times the rate of white women. And there is, of course, the shame of this land of the free, boasting the largest prison population on the planet, of which the descendants of the enslaved make up the largest share. The matter of reparations is one of making amends and direct redress, but it is also a question of citizenship. In H.R. 40, this body has a chance to both make good on its 2009 apology for enslavement and reject fair-weather patriotism, to say that a nation is both its credits and its debits, that if Thomas Jefferson matters, so does Sally Hemings, that if D-Day matters, so does Black Wall Street, that if Valley Forge matters, so does Fort Pillow. Because the question really is not whether we will be tied to the somethings of our past, but whether we are courageous enough to be tied to the whole of them. Thank you.
Okay, so, I find myself in various kinds of discussion about, race relations, and often I find myself saying something like, okay, let's not make this an either-or thing, let's not have a false binary. Let's look, there's room in the middle. But in this case, it seems to me there is a binary. There's a lot to be said about, how reparations might be done and all that sort of thing, but basically, to me, you're either on the side of the plaintiff or you're on the side of the defendant. It's sort of a which side are you on kind of thing. Now, just in case we have quite a few people on the side of the plaintiff here, we have our special guest speaker to talk. If you're on that side, then you do have to think about what form should reparations take, or what forms, plural. And we've asked Dr. Horn especially to share his expertise and his thinking, his wisdom on that question. What might reparations look like? And of course, any other insights you want to share with us, we welcome. Trudy is going to do the introduction.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about that PowerPoint. How disappointing, but I think that the voices that we heard were powerful enough for us to get a sense of what the argument or the arguments are. But as Bob said, and I just want to give Bob credit for doing so much of the research. This makes the second presentation he has participated in. It's so funny because, I'm sitting there with this white guy in the house and saying, I wonder why there's no talk about reparations, right? He was saying this long before we had this recent congressional hearing. And as many of you know, Bob immediately got busy in researching the topic and presenting to us the different ways that reparations could take place in America. But now we have Dr. David Horn with us. He's a retired but full tenured professor of critical thinking and African political economic history. And he's also the former chair, twice as a matter of fact, of the Pan-African Studies Department at Cal State Northridge. He has taught graduate public policy and introductory to political analysis as part of the Masters of Public Policy program. And he is the graduate advisor for the Pan-African Studies, now Africana Studies Department. He was the original executive director of the California African American Political Institute at CSU Northridge. And he was the original executive director of the revised California African American Political and Economic Institute, now housed at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And it's now called the Merv Diamond Lee African American Political and Economic Institute. He created and chaired the award-winning Black Think Tank at Cal State Dominguez Hills from its origin in 2006 to 2011. And this vita goes on, but let's hear now from Dr. Horn. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Bob said I was going to provide some wisdom. I don't know about that part. We will see. I would like to make a couple of quick announcements. Number one, it's nice to see Santa Monica is still progressive. It's nice to see y'all still doing stuff out here. And whoever came up with the idea of white people for black lives, I'm all for it. Thank you. Couple of quick points. I teach. That means I disrupt. I don't allow my students to come in and walk out the same way. 2 quick points. Number one, for everybody white in here, forgive me for having to divide you, but I need to. For everybody white in here, reparations is not about money. Please get that out of your mind. It's not about your paying us a bunch of money. We're not trying to put the make on white folks. Of course, we will accept it if you provide it. We're not going to reject, but reparations is not about money. Reparations is an acknowledgement of the wrong that has been done. The tremendous wrong, continuing wrong. Reparations is about an apology for that wrong. And then reparations is about atonement for every man in here. You know when we've been caught, when we have done something wrong, and we all do. And we are trying to convince our significant other that we're sorry. We apologize. We didn't know what we were doing. Please forgive us. They may forgive us. They may let us off the hook. 2 things. If I did it one time, I'm going to do it again. You know that, I know that. Unless there is atonement. Give me all your credit cards and don't say anything until I come back. I want a brand new Cadillac. I want something that makes you know you should have done what you did. If there's no atonement, there's no apology. There's no sense of I shouldn't have done it. Reparations is about the acknowledgement, the apology, and the atonement. Now, if atonement happens to involve some money, so be it. Reparations is not about money. Please get that out of your head. We are not asking you pay us trillions of dollars. America cannot pay us enough money. You took it, you used it, and yes, you owe it. But we know you're not going to pay it back. Look, the very first commodity on the stock exchange in this country was slavery. You were buying and selling people. It was wealth. We made more money in the domestic slave trade than we did in the transatlantic slave trade, which most of you don't know anything about. The transatlantic slave trade was officially over in 1820. States had to figure out another way to make money from black folk. So guess what? They started slave breeding. They started buying women who could provide a lot of children that they could sell. Virginia used to sell slaves. When they could no longer bring them in, they simply bred them like you do animals. Second point, for the black audience in here. They didn't make a promise, they didn't break a promise. We grew up, I grew up, believing 40 acres and a mule was a mantra. It was part and parcel of what it meant to be black in America. Well, they lied to us. They didn't mean to lie, but they lied. The federal government never made a promise that they were going to give us 40 acres and no damn mules. It didn't happen. Here's the skinny. General Sherman did meet with 40 ministers from the large congregation of people following his army as he was trying to burn the South to the ground. He believed in the old adage, if you want to win a war, make it total war. Forget having survivors. Kill them all. Burn the land. Make sure they can't grow any crops. And the war will be over. A lot of African Americans followed the General Sherman as he came through the South. Because, of course, the Emancipation Proclamation had already been issued. This is 1865. As the African Americans followed, Sherman got upset. He was trying to conduct a war. And here were all these people saying, but take care of me, take care of us. So he called a meeting. At the meeting in Savannah, they had a conversation. What do you want? What do you want from us? What do you want from me? And the 40 ministers said, we want land. We want land. We want a way to take care of ourselves. What good is freedom if we have no resources? Freedom is an illusion. Fine. We have all of this confiscated land from all of these folk who are Confederates. They have abandoned their land. We can now let you use the land. Sherman did not have the authority to provide ownership land to African Americans. He let African Americans possess the land. Lincoln hated the idea. We have been told that Lincoln loved the idea. He did not. He said, you are going to make the Southerners crazy by giving away their land. He didn't do anything about it except to tell Stanton, his secretary, to tell Sherman to rescind the order. And then he was assassinated. And then Andrew Johnson took over and said, give all the land back to the South. Give the Confederates, who should be glorified, not punished, give the land back to the Confederates. What I'm saying is, as part of my history, I have been brought up believing 40 acres and a mule. They made a promise to us, and they broke that promise. They didn't make a promise to us. At least not that time. They made some other promises. The reparations, again, is full of truth and falsity. Let's talk about reparations now. H.R. 40, which has been around since 1989. It has been introduced and reintroduced every session of Congress. In 2017, when the Me Too folk got Congressman John Conyers to retire, during that last session, he rewrote H.R. 40. H.R. 40 was originally legislation for the government to study the issue, study what happened, study what you've done, study the situation of slavery, Jim Crowism, systematic racism, redlining, African Americans fighting for this country in war, coming back home, not being able to utilize the GI Bill to get a home, to even get a job. The original H.R. 40 was to study all of that. John Conyers revised H.R. 40 just before he retired. And that is H.R. 40 legislation that has now been, reintroduced by Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas. That H.R. 40 is not a study bill. We have been incorrectly putting out this information. It was originally a study bill. This bill says there will be a 13-person reparations commission identified. 3 people by the president Hopefully, by God, it won't be the one who's there now. 3 people by the House of Representatives, 1 person by the Senate, and 6 people by the NAACP and other civil rights organizations. That 13-person commission is supposed to identify reparations results. Here's what we want you to do, United States, about reparations. The hell with your study. We've done enough study. In fact, for those of you who want to read something that will really expand your mind, email or Google, not email, Google U.S. Senate Resolution 2009. The U.S. Senate, with Mitch McConnell in it, voting for it, voted for the most comprehensive apology this government has ever made to African Americans, about African Americans, and about trying to pull this country together. The resolution was a full-scale description of the impact of slavery, of Jim Crowism, redlining, etc. The beautiful piece of work. When the resolution was put forward to the reparations groups in the country, we said, no, we don't want it. We rejected it. Well, I say we because I was part of that group, but I was totally against that particular point of view. Rejecting the document, I think, was a mistake then, is a mistake now, but it's still there. And Mitch McConnell did vote for it. It was all, I think it was 97-0 or something. Unanimous U.S. Senate. Beautiful apology. The most comprehensive apology ever made by the federal government to African Americans. 2009, U.S. Senate resolution. You'll find it still on Google. H.R. 40 will pass the U.S. Congress. It will probably pass the U.S. House of Representatives in September, October. And for those of you who think the House has not been doing its job, I invite you to go and look at the article that I did on our weekly newspaper, or a number of other people who've been writing. They have passed over 50 pieces of legislation. The Senate has only decided to countersign 4 pieces out of those 50. So don't anybody think the House has only been trying to protect 4 members or talking about investigating number 45. The House has been doing its job. The Senate has not. Reparations is about acknowledgement, apology, and atonement. If you're not talking about all 3, you're not talking about reparations, you're talking about something else. Clearly there are people who are absolutely convinced this is all about, we're going to make white people pay us money. And they will make that argument, but that is not correct. That is not the reparations movement. The reparations movement has been around for 150 years. Movement, not 1 or 2 people. The movement started off being an attempt to get pensions paid to former African American soldiers. You do all understand that when we talk about African Americans, there has not been one war in this country, even before it was this country, has fought that we have not been part of. We were not only leading the charge with Crispus Attucks. For the colonial army, we're talking about individual states or colonies, each of which had its own military. There was no one big continental army. That's garbage. Because we were not a country. We were a set of colonies. And the Green Mountain Boys and a whole bunch of other soldiers like that were African American. They fought for this country's freedom. Not all of them did that. The British came in and said, you know what? If you come and fight for the British, we're free. We'll give you freedom. Fight for us and you're free. 20,000 people said, fine, we'll do that. The rest of the African Americans fought for what we have come to call the United States of America. And every other war, including the Civil War, over 160,000 African Americans. You all saw Glory, you all like Denzel, so you see whatever he does. Over 160,000 African Americans fought and died during the Civil War. We're not even talking about the African Americans who were made to fight for the Confederacy. They didn't want to, but they had to. Reparations is about remembering, making sure we have this correct. Yes, America needs to deal with reparations. It is something you have to say whose time has come, and it will be taken care of. It's not going to be easy, but we do have to get it done, and we need to start off by clarifying what the hell it is that we're talking about. 90% of the white folks in this country believe reparations is only about money. You try to make us pay you money. No, we're not. You don't have enough to pay us what you owe us. But you will acknowledge what we have done that you did not pay us for. Part of the discussion that Bob was having with you a few minutes ago. One major argument for and about reparations. There's something called unjust enrichment. Mitch McConnell can say, I was not around 150 years ago. No, he was not, but his family was, and his family used slaves to build the wealth that Mitch McConnell's family now has. So the house that Mitch McConnell is living in, and that land, directly came from slave labor. But when we talk about why should white Americans even care about reparations, you have what we call unjust enrichment. That is, all of your white privileges, all of them. And white people have privileges we would never have. Just because you're white, not because you're smart, not because you're talented, just because you're white. You get opportunities, you get a chance to get the job. You go into the student loan office. You have gotten your needs analysis taken care of. You have gotten somebody to say that we're going to let you have some money to go to school. And when you go in, they will give you a bunch of loans. Here's the issue. It's called grants and loans. But when we go in, it's always a loan. They don't give us grants. Stuff we don't have to pay back. When we even had the money and the education and the wherewithal to apply for and to get a decent house. 9 out of 10 times we were refused outright. Not because our credit scores were not high enough, not because we did not have enough income, just because. Whites get advantages and opportunities just because they're white. That's called unjust enrichment. You don't have to have owned a slave. Most white people never owned slaves. But they all benefited from it. Reparations. Acknowledgement, apology, atonement. That's what it has to be, not just an argument over money. The history tells us exactly why it has to be that kind of cooperative. Some of you are yawning, that's unusual for me in a class, but I will stop now anyway. If you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you so much for educating me about this, for being here tonight. My question is this. If somebody asked me, well, how would this look How would it look like?
I can't hear.
What would it look like in terms of the payout? Yes, acknowledgement, apology, and atonement, but then at the end of the day, what are you gonna give us?
Okay. The 13 people who will be selected to be on that commission will determine that. But let me tell you part of what they're going to have to deal with. Black people don't all think the same. We have a whole lot of differences of opinion. There are some black folk who would want to sit me down. No, Dr. Horn, no. We want money. I don't care about any of that other stuff. They need to pay us. And don't tell me that if they give it to me on Monday, I will spend it on Friday. Damn that, I want the money. Let me decide whether I'm going to spend it. We have not yet decided how best to handle this. Let me give you an example of why that is important. Our Native American brothers and sisters have been able to get significant settlements from the government. They don't like to call them reparations because theirs are legally tied to treaties and that kind of thing. When the Cherokee Nation was given its last settlement, the chief said a whole lot of folk rushed up to say they were now, they were part of the Cherokee Nation. There may have been 1/1000th of some connection, a lot less than Elizabeth Warren. But the chief said, wait a minute. Who are you people? Why should you share in wealth that should be coming to folks who had their land taken away? We got marched on a 3,000-mile Trail of Tears. So they had to come up with a book that said you have to prove that at least your grandparents were full bloods. If you can't prove that, get out of my face. You got to be part of this. We are going to have to do the same thing. All black people are not the same. There's an argument within the group that goes from the Caribbean. Even those who have become citizens. They may have been born there, but they've lived here. Then the argument is you need to go back to Jamaica or Trinidad or Barbados. You're not part of this. We are talking about descendants of slaves. Well, there's an issue about that. Oh, everybody black wasn't slaves anyway. There were a bunch of black folk who owned property. Some of whom owned slaves. A handful. But larger than that was a group of African Americans who were never slaves, who always had money. Why should they get more? Why should they get any kind of compensation? So, figuring out exactly what to do and how to do it has not yet been decided. It is something that we are working on. Yes, sir.
I look, the way that we normally do this, y'all know we gonna count them off. Robbie, come up here and help me, please. Robbie does this better than anybody. So we have Craig, we have Gina, we have Audrey, we have Kathy. And then we'll start over.
Yes, my brother.
Craig can talk louder.
Thank you. What I was most intrigued about is your very first statement, this isn't about money. And whenever I hear the whole question of reparations, the first thing that comes up is money. Now, I guess my question becomes, if you look at what we have gone through historically as a people in this society, there is so much that needs to be done in respect to healing
Right.
And I'm wondering specifically if indeed that aspect is being looked at seriously, because we are suffering through things, even, as residents of the city of Baltimore.
Right. Right.
All right.
Obvious.
I'll say Baltimore because that's in the news.
Okay.
So I'm wondering specifically, how extensive then does the argument about the healing get addressed in, I guess you could say, in echelons such as yourself in terms of education, in terms of psychological, with folks who do psychological stuff. I know there's a book on, post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Right.
Those types of questions. How serious is that debate in Congress to address those types of issues?
They will not be debated in Congress. None of those issues. That 13-member commission will debate those issues. We've already tried to have a major national survey to ask African Americans, when we get to the end game, when it's checkmate, what do you want us to ask for? What do you want us to put on the table? So all the issues that you raised will be dealt with by the people who should be making that decision. It will not be easy. We are going to have some knockdown, drag-out arguments. The national survey already told us some people want a 50-year educational program so that all African-American children who can graduate from 12th grade get a free college education. Some people have said we want a 50-year business development fund so that all African Americans who want to go into business get a heads up. They get the training if they need it. They get the contacts if they need it. They get the money to start a business. All of those who want to get into construction, they want to go back to building their own houses instead of living in all these tenement buildings. You will get what you need to do that. And most importantly, and again, we've been telling this, it's not a lie, but it is a saying that we've got used to. It's almost as bad as 40 acres and a mule. As Americans, we have the freedom to have liberty, to have happiness. That's not what John Locke said. That's what Thomas Jefferson, the slave owner, said. Our natural rights are land, liberty. It's not about pursuit of happiness. We want land, which is what they made sure African Americans did not have. They stole the land, and when you don't have the land and resources, how can you build? So all of those discussions will be taken up by the commission, not by Congress.
So, is it you, Gina, and then we swing?
And I'll try to be shorter, but I'm a teacher.
So, I'm gonna count out. You wanna do it, Robert? Robert does it the best. You wanna count
y'all
out?
know how we do this. Okay.
Once people line up and have the mic. No? Okay.
No.
Here, Mike, you can change the game if you want to. You can do whatever you want. No, okay, so here we go. One, were you number two? You were two.
Craig was one.
Okay, and who was 3 and 4? You were 3? Okay.
And Kathy was 5.
No, I was 5 too.
Okay, y'all remember your numbers now. I did. Okay, since Trudy started it off, but after this, I got it.
probably not gonna say this correctly, but I mean, I don't know. I'm bothered at the fact of when it comes to African American people or Black people, why can't we ask for money? Why do we always have to ask for like the less of whatever? You know, why can't, I mean, other races have gotten money. Why do we, as African Americans, why can't we ask for, it's not to say that I want money, but I just feel like we always have to settle for whatever they want to give us. Why can't we ask for what we want and get what we want?
Okay. Quick answer. We didn't say we were not going to have money on the table as part of the discussion. Thank you. But number one, this country cannot afford to pay us what they owe us. This country would owe us at least $10 trillion. They can't pay. This country cannot pay us what they owe us. That's number one. The second thing is, actually, there are a number of governmental officials who would love to be able to write a check. Now y'all go away. Don't ever come back. Don't come back and ask us for another penny. In fact, you don't even have to stay in this country. Take the money and leave. Go back to the Caribbean, go back to Africa, and leave. The other thing, let's say the government decided, and by the way, y'all understand, the U.S. government never had a slavery law. They never had a, we are setting up slavery for, for African Americans. They did end it with the 13th Amendment, not the Emancipation Proclamation. But the government never had slave legislation, unless you want to go back to the original Constitution, 3/5 of the person. This was state legislation. For example, California. Slavery was illegal in California. That should have never been a slave anywhere in this state. California owes us reparations because you allowed slavery illegally in this state. There are 24 states that had legislation that set up slavery as a legal property relationship. 24. Not the federal government. But yes, we can ask for money. But here is a part of the problem of that. Those who would designate the money, a congressional decision, would say, we're going to give them money, because we got to give it to somebody. We're going to give it to the NAACP. We're going to give it to a black organization. Now you go and get your money from them and don't come back. Think about us trying to go to the NAACP and saying give me my money. That will be the biggest fight you've ever seen. But yeah, there will be money discussed by that 13-member commission. Yes.
I have a.
I may have yelled it out.
I have a question about your personal beliefs on the subject. Do you believe there's any value in promoting and normalizing it with white people? The idea that that reparations can be an interpersonal thing, like paying people's bail, co-signing on their apartment leases, going on websites like Patreon that compensate like writers, people that write and aren't paid for their services, but we love their articles, things like that.
Anything like that you can do, and you're willing to do it, please do. But don't be upset if they don't let you call it reparations. You're doing it because you enjoy helping somebody. You will do it because you are able to help and you decide to help. But don't get upset if they don't let you call it reparations.
And do you personally feel that that's a form of reparations?
No. No, I think it is just what you call it. You made a decision to help somebody because you could. Because you felt better because you could. Whatever your numbers were, keep on.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
well done.
It's this little lady right here, but Jeremiah, just for a second, I think when we turned off the audio visual, we may have turned off the.
Yeah, I think I turned back on the mic. You try, is it now? No? Try it now?
Hello? Hello? Is that better? Hello?
I don't know.
You can be loud. Go ahead and start. You can be
Very
loud.
bad.
Okay.
We allow people anyway.
Be real loud.
I
Stand
can
on
be
the
loud.
chair. No, don't.
With all due respect, Dr. Horn, thank you for your time. I read an article in the New Yorker, it's also in ProPublica, speaking to exactly land disposition from a black family going back to post-slavery.
Right.
And
Kathy, I think the mic is on.
okay.
Yes.
And it's a really good, a really good example, and I posted the article on my Facebook that said, before I knew about this workshop, this is a case for reparations. The head of a family in Carteret County, and forgive me if you know this already, sir. In Carteret County, North Carolina, the patriarch bought some land on the coast, and he said, but he did not leave a will.
Right.
Because apparently...
Not a will that he put in the court.
That's right. It's called heirs property.
Right.
So years went by and individual family members, we're talking about post-slavery, so years went by, individual family members built their property along in this town, or this county in North Carolina. Developers come around and start grabbing this land because people can't come up with titles to it. Fast forward, two brothers who are contemporary of a lot of us, they're in their 60s, spent more than 8 years in jail because they refused
to leave the land.
And a judge finally came around and released them without specifically granting them ownership of the land. So they refused still to leave. So this is published in ProPublica and the New Yorker, and the family is Real, Melvin Davis and Curtis Reels. It was fascinating. I learned a lot. It goes into the history of what you said about taking away the property of 40 acres and a mule. I learned something. I hope other people find it as informational. Thank you for your time.
Again, understand private property is fundamental in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamental. A lot of people are going to jail because of some issue about land. African Americans used to own 8.5 million acres of land in this country. There were a whole lot of black farmers. It's now down to 1.3 million acres. There's been a systematic eradication of black home ownership, black land ownership. Just one other example to tack on to the one that the sister just raised. Jefferson Davis, the President of the United States of the Confederacy. Please, y'all, get this out of your mind. Robert E. Lee was not a hero of the United States. He was a traitor. He was in charge of the army of the Confederacy that was attempting to destroy the United States. Jefferson Davis owned some land in Virginia, a lot of land. When the war was over, and they had lost, and he was no longer president of anything, a black man bought the land, paid the money, bought the land. His brother, Jefferson Davis' brother, who really didn't talk to his older brother, who really had almost no relationship with him, went to court and claimed the land that the black man had bought from Jefferson Davis. The court gave the brother the land, even though he had no title, he had nothing to say it, he even had any connection to the brother. There's been a systematic attempt to make sure black folk cannot own land. You know most of the African Americans in California live in apartments, y'all know that, right? Yeah. So hearing that y'all are working on the Costa-Hawkins law, hopefully we're going to do it better this time than we did the last time. Yeah, we need that to be eradicated. We need rent control. Santa Monica has rent control. You're the only thing that does. You're the only entity that does, really.
West Hollywood. West Hollywood.
West Hollywood. Okay.
All right. Okay, so y'all ready to count off again. This is how we do this. I'm counting in 5s. Remember your number, because your neighbor will snatch it. Okay. 1, 2 in the red shirt. 3 in the black shirt. Bob is 4. And Jeremiah is 5.
By the way, Jeremiah, who was a member of your group, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Just did your group proud. We had a debate, a youth debate about reparations. Jeremiah won the top prize.
Okay, I have a question and comment. Comments rather. My first and second question is, it has to do with reparation. I believe there was a question, I believe there was a group that was compensated reparationally following the Vietnam War. The Vietnamese, I believe, I'm not sure if it was the Mies, but it has to do with that. And after World War II, the Asian American. That may be a rhetorical question, I understand. I'm not really all of that up on their reparation, but I understand someone in this country had gotten, or some people in this country had gotten reparation. Now, I've been hearing about reparation since 40 acres and a mule. I heard about it regarding the Reconstruction. They didn't really name it reparation, but it was a form of compensation. Now, one might say, have we had, when I say we, because I am an African American, have we had a chance to get it together? 400 years of slavery. There is no amount of money financially, and there is no amount, whether it's given by and through education. To me, there is no amount of money that will be able to repay that. I just don't see that. And I, for one, am getting reparation. And when we say maybe there may be a form of getting reparation through education, just give it to them through education. Each time something is given to the African American people, status quo have a way of changing the rule. And then I go to the Bakke case. The Bakke case versus UC Davis. When we thought minorities could get in school for a reason, they changed the rule and Bakke got in instead of that. Do we remember that? Yes. And how do we, if we get reparation, how do we keep everybody else from jumping in on it and it stays just among African Americans? Is there a way that Congress could do that? Because each time there is a way of jumping in and saying, oh, I'm a minority, sexism, racism, all of them, and when you can get money for your small businesses. Who ended up with the most money for the small businesses? These are the kind, I could go on and on and on, and I'm not going to take up more time. I just wanted to make that comment. And we, you know, I could go on. I'm not going to take up any more time.
All right, thank you. That's former Commissioner Ross.
That one was deep. Let me see, can I be quick? Number one, Japanese Americans who were victimized by the only full-scale governmental mass discrimination in the history of this country, if you don't think about Native Americans who lost their whole land. The president said put them in jail, they're dangerous. Congress agreed, and the court agreed. All three branches of government said that these people cannot be allowed to live in California and other parts of the country after they have bombed Pearl Harbor. We just can't trust them. Two things. Number one, African Americans who now live in the Merck Park, in Baldwin Hills, in View Park, in Adams, they all were able to get their houses because Japanese Americans were taken out of the houses and put in concentration camps. Somebody else's misfortune ends up being your fortune. We were concentrated over on Central and South. The other thing, the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which is what John Conyers' H.R. 40 was originally based on, ended up, after a lot of squabbling, fighting, particularly among the young Japanese Americans and the older Japanese Americans, the ones who basically been put in Manzanar and other camps. The young people said, you cannot accept that. That is embarrassing, that is disrespectful, you didn't deserve it, you got to fight. At the end of their family squabble, they got the U.S. Congress to pass Civil Liberties Act, which basically said you can get $20,000 as compensation for your loss of property and for your being put, or you're being put into a concentration camp. $20,000. Some of those folk lost $5 million in housing. You got $20,000. I can guarantee you, if we have the discussion and the agreement that African Americans should get some compensation, it will not be what we are owed. And we're going to fight over what the hell it will be. $20,000 is not going to be enough to make any of us feel whole. All the stuff that's happened to us because we're black, no, that's not going to be enough. Yes, we will take it, but it will not be enough. It cannot just be based on money. Money will not give you respect. It just cannot. Somebody else, I'm good with that point.
I think she had asked, how do you keep everybody else from jumping in the boat?
Right. My short answer to that is it will not be Congress's decision. It'll be that 13-person commission. We're going to have some serious debate about who will be part of a reparations solution. For whom is reparations going to be for? We have not yet decided that.
Okay. All right.
Everybody black ain't black.
Okay.
And if you're black, you know what I'm talking about.
Hello, my name is Michael. I came to the church a couple of years ago on Ocean Park, and I announced a book that I wrote in 2009 called The Black American Dollar Bill. It's time for Black Americans to go into a new direction, own their own money, first build to be different than in God we trust. So blacks can make their own decisions on federal credit unions, banks, etc. Schools, police departments.
I remember your book, it was a very good idea.
Yes, this was 2009.
Yes.
But anyway, a lot of people are talking, it's time for a change. If you don't do something new, which is in the Bible, you're not going to make a change. You're just going round and round in circles. It's time for something new.
Okay.
everybody pull together, vote all across the country, be surprised how many white people are gonna vote for this. You're gonna be surprised, and make it happen, make it a reality.
As long as they understand it's not just about money, I will not be surprised.
You own your own money, I'm telling you.
I agree with you.
Got all that yesterday stuff on.
Okay.
I thought it was five.
No, three.
Hi, I was not aware that the framework for addressing the subject of reparations was the civil suit model, because we talked about plaintiff and defendant and all.
Right.
But,
An analogy.
It's an analogy.
all right, well,
That's
it's,
not bad.
okay, because I, for many, many years, studied and even taught for a while Holocaust studies.
Mm-hmm.
At the close of World War II, the concept of crimes against humanity was a very rational approach to this. Even though there's technically no real world court, there are certain things which in any nation would be understood as criminal acts.
Right.
By any moral standard anywhere.
Right.
And I would think that someone looking at it from that perspective, because by that logic, reparations would last about the lifetime of the United States of America, 1,000 years if America's still around from now. Don't you think, is that unreasonable? I mean, the reparations should go on forever, I think, no?
It's fine with me.
But is anybody looking at it that way? I mean, criminal acts.
Yes, the 2001 International Conference, UN Conference against racism, xenophobia, other forms of racism, the document that came out, the official document that came out of the official conference, not the non-governmental conference, said that slavery and the slave trade were crimes against humanity and should have always been recognized as that. So that any resolution has to take that into account. So yeah, it has been looked at. It will be part of whatever discussion comes out of the HR 40 Commission. Yes, I guess. Well, I don't know the.
Yeah, he has the mic.
Okay. And Bob, thank you very much for what you presented.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify in reference to the last comment, I wasn't suggesting that the courts would be the place where this plays out. I said that was an analogy. It's an analogy of plaintiff to defendant, not a literal court matter. So, well, I have a few things to throw out there and welcome your comments. It's not exactly a question, but as Janet said, I read a lot. The last book I read was called How Racism Takes Place by George Lipsitz. And place was used sort of as a pun, not only how racism happens, but how racism literally commands space. And you've alluded to this in a number of different ways. It seems overwhelmingly true that white supremacy has, to such a huge extent, taken the form of control of space. Mm-hmm. You know, like Jefferson buys Louisiana Purchase from France. White people own the space, they think, right? And they think they're entitled to it. And that's played out in so many different ways. You talked about the redlining and so forth. That's been, white people have controlled who lives in the space they consider they're entitled to. And the government has given them all kinds of subsidies to go out in the suburbs and have their nice exclusive white space. And at the same time, backed policies which have, it's not market, it's like black people must stay in this area because they're not allowed to buy outside of it. There's zoning that puts, that creates the worst environmental hazards for black spaces and so forth. So there's this huge issue of whites, just having so much more control. And
And a lot of that came from slavery.
Yes, and directly down, because no money, no property granted to freed slaves. And almost at the same time, the Homestead Act is giving white people millions of acres
of land for free.
For free land. Right. Of course, it was taken from Native Americans. Right. So I guess what I'm leading up to is, yes, that can't be all solved with handing out checks.
Right.
A lot of money, it would take a lot of money in a lot of ways to deal with all this, which is huge. But it couldn't be just giving individuals money, because the black person's money is not worth as much because of discrimination. Anyway, I like the idea that reparations would ideally would continue, not just be, oh, here it is, but writing this stuff would take a long time, and I think the process should continue until everything is equal. Not just until you've got your money.
Can y'all hear me?
No.
No, I don't know what I'm talking about.
I can hear you.
People have hard time. Can y'all all hear me or like what? No? Okay. Well, thank you, first and foremost. I've had the utmost respect for you and your opinions and your experience and your expertise on reparations. And of course, Dr. Lau is your wife, who was my sociology teacher back in junior college, who I love to death. So in my opinion, I feel like being black is tremendously hard in America, to say the least. Me organizing at the LA Black Worker Center, a lot of things that I encounter is that black people walking around in a state of confusion and trauma. So that's because of the system that hits us from different angles that we have no idea where it's coming from half the time, right? And with all the things that happen in our community, whether it's internally or externally, causes the trauma for us. So with that, I have a two-part question. So with that, how do we benefit from reparations when there's so many different systematic, different systems that oppress us on a habitual basis? And then two, when it comes to HR 40, with this Commission of 13, how can we make this commission a black-centered commission, where we're not having anybody outside of our race being the dictator of what we demand for reparations? It's not an ask, it's a demand. And I know you know, but it's a demand for reparations. It's not an ask, and I'm telling you that from a black perspective. So how can we make that a black discussion and a black-led commission rather than just being over-electing people? How can we as people, and particularly black people, force not only the government, but even the NAACP, who I've had my own problems with, make sure that we appoint the proper people for this commission?
Let me take that one, the second one first, because it's quicker. Number one, we can't determine the 13. The president, they may amend the legislation. Maybe it'll go from 13 to 15, but there will be a number. Each branch of government will be assigned a number. The president is supposed to appoint 3 people. Can you imagine 3 people that number 45 will appoint?
Yeah.
They will make sure that reparations dies, gets flushed down the toilet, any mention of it. The issue of trying to make sure all 13 or all 15 are African American, clearly I have sympathy with that position, but it's not historical. John Brown did more for black people than a whole lot of other black people during that time or after that time. We've had some white people who have really been down. I mean, willing to throw everything into trying to change the situation. So simply being black ain't enough.
That's right.
There are a whole lot of black people should not be in the room. Skin color, you know, just like we say, all my skin folks ain't kin folks. So even though we would try to get all 13, all 15 black, that's not the be all and end all of it. Because there's just too many crazy black folk who look in the mirror and see something else entirely different. One of our Supreme Court justices is like that. which is why he's not mentioned but one time in the entire African American Museum. One, not even a whole line. Just his name, one time. The other thing, the road is long, and we're still on it. But everything they've thrown at us, we've survived. We're still here. There has been a systematic campaign to reduce the number of African Americans in this country. There's never been any attempt to wipe us out. Genocide has never been the aim, even by the KKK. They've aimed at individuals who tried to vote, who tried to stand up for themselves, tried to buy land, but they've never tried to eliminate black folk. There's a short story by Derek Bell called Space Traders. Y'all can Google it. Derek Bell, the Harvard attorney who taught Barack Obama when he first went to Harvard. The plot of the story says that a group of aliens come to Earth, bring all the leaders together, particularly the leaders of the United States, since we are supposed to be the exceptional dominant country, and said, we're here to make a deal. We're not here to blow you all up. We're here to make a deal. We promise you all of the resources that you can ever need. We promise you anything and everything your society desires, wishes, and would have. All you have to do is give us one thing for our part of the deal. All the black folk in your country will have to come and go with us. For whites to even contemplate in the United States that they can deal without us, that this country can even exist without us, is impossible. Now, they claim y'all don't need to be here. There are some fools who will get an AR-15 and some other guns and try to come into a couple of black neighborhoods and shoot the people up like they did in El Paso, God forbid. But the young man put on his so-called manifesto, I'm out here to kill Hispanics. My job is to shoot all of them. There are people who want to do that to black folk. They won't try now. We all know what they did do. The black people shoot back. And a whole lot of them have been in warfare. So they're not going to attack the African American community, even though they say they want to do it. This country cannot exist without us. The white people really thought we were going to leave. We go up and go to Africa. Talking about going back, I plan to go back. But when I talk about going back, I'm talking about a unified African nation of over 1.5 billion people running the joint. Because we're going to kill ourselves over here with climate change. You all going to be trying to come to Africa, and we're going to try to tell y'all, no, go home. Y'all go back home.
All right, let's try to get a few more questions in before it's over. Patrick, there's one. That's it? Just one? It's two. No. Two. and we'll end with you.
Hello, Dr. Horn.
How you doing?
Very good. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I have a question that's more maybe politically oriented. It's not because, you know, with the thing about moralism and money, it usually muddies a lot of waters. So my question to you is, how does reparations change the economic system of our country? Because
it will not change the economic system.
Can you explain how? Because the thing is that our economic system is based on capitalism, but just the private ownership of the means of production.
Right.
So when it comes to talking about, you know, questions about who benefits, you know, does white people really benefit from racism? To some extent.
Of course they do.
Yes, to some extent, yes, but I would also try to add in the fact that white people got, because of racism, white people, rather white working class people, was persuaded to, you know, to identify with the owners of the means of production, whether it's the slave masters, the railroad, the northern railroad operators, the northern banking system, the military, the law enforcement, whatever. They were persuaded to identify with them in order to get crumbs. My argument, not privileges, crumbs from the table. Because today, in the 21st century, all the wealth, whether it's white, black, otherwise, has been concentrated to the very upper echelons of predominantly white elites.
Right.
So the quote is, even in England, you know, the Guardian article made this statement back in April of 2018 of who owns Britain.
Right.
And it states that 18% of land ownership, since you also brought up a lot about land, 18% is owned by corporations, another 17% is owned by banking institutions.
And they're all in the House of Lords.
All in the House of Lords. Oh.
Yeah.
Half of it is, sorry, and also just 15% is owned by just oligarchs. So that's just 1% owning 50% of land in England.
Right.
Predominantly white. I'm pretty sure those institutions is not going to give white working class people crumbs, because there's another institution called the National Poverty Wage in England saying that 9% of the population in UK is poor, working for £7.25 pounds, when the national wage should have been £10.
Right.
So the context of the reason, sorry, I'm going on a little bit of tangent. My question is that with issues such as deflated wages, wage theft, massive, school to prison pipeline for black folks, just massive disfranchisement, white and otherwise, how can we change the conversation to say, like, with reparations, it's about trying to change structural changes, not some white guilt BS or whatever.
Thank you. You should be in my class at school.
I'm not going to say that.
So we would have a lot of time for me to answer that. Couple of things. Between socialism and capitalism, capitalism is not, in essence, a bad economic system. We have operated it badly, so that we let the banks and the financial companies take over. It's about private property ownership. Who owns the land controls the politics. And that's worldwide. reparations is not going to change that. Whatever we get will be within the American capitalist system, hopefully a revived, changed capitalist system. Hopefully one of the 20, what do we have now, 24, 25, however many we have in terms of the Democratic presidents, presidential contenders running to be president. Hopefully at least one of them will get through to actually try to change wealth equity in this country. The small handful of people who own 90% of the land and resources in this country. That's not the way it was supposed to have been. Unions didn't change enough of that. Reparations is not going to impact that structural arrangement at all. I wish it would, but it won't.
One second to the last question.
Yeah.
Doctor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Horn. I've learned a lot from you, and I appreciate everybody who's made contributions to the conversation here. I've learned a lot, and I just guess I want to say that taking all this into consideration, it seems to me that ultimately reparations won't be complete until we end racism in all its forms.
Excellent comment. I hope you're wrong. I hope we achieve reparations while we're still working on racism. Reparations will help with the healing. We will have a different conversation. But now racism is not going to go away just because we get reparations. That's unfortunate, but that's true.
All right, so.
Let me say this last quick thing. A few years ago, CNN did a study that they publicized. They had 10 kids, Asian, Hispanic, African American, and white. 6 years old. They showed these children a number of images. One image had a black kid sitting on a swing set. Another showed a browner kid sitting on a swing set. Another showed a white kid. Then you ask each of those children, who would you consider to be your friend? Virtually every one of the 10 children picked the white kid.
Yeah.
Who do you like looking at this page? Virtually every one of the children chose the white kid. Who do you look like? Every one of the children chose the white kid. Dark-skinned black child said, I look like this. Okay? When they showed the results of the experiment to the parents, most of the parents were totally upset. No, my child cannot, no. My child cannot be racist. I don't teach my children that. That's not what happens in our household. Yes, it does. Because we do it subtly. We don't do it overtly. We don't say, see that child, stay away from that child. That child is a troublemaker. How do you know? Because they look black. And the children had already said that. Who on this page looks like they're suspicious? It looks like you might have to call the police on them. All 10 children chose the black kid. All of them.
Even the black kid?
Even the black kids. All 10 children chose the black kid. They go into jail. I don't want to be around them. The parents, particularly the white parents, were totally upset that their children, 6 years old, were doing this. Because they couldn't understand how this can happen. It happens because that's what you taught your child. You didn't intend to teach your child that, but you do it in subtle ways. You do it by what you watch on TV. You do it by what kind of books. You do it by what kind of movies. You do it by who you invite to your house. racism is not going anywhere because we keep teaching our children to be just like us and then act like we're surprised when we see them. It's not going to die anytime soon. And all the reparations will help the healing. It will help the understanding. It's not going to end the problem. As long as whites feel privileged just because they're white, you may not want to, but you do. As long as y'all keep feeling that way, and I feel underprivileged because I'm black, racism is alive and well. And not going anywhere. I got a PhD from UCLA, one of the best schools in the country. I have written all kinds of articles. I am a scholar. Yes, I retired, but it's called emeritus. Because I was a real distinguished professor at my university. When I get on the elevator at CSUN, and some of my white female colleagues are getting on the same elevator, they grab their purse a little tighter. They move a little closer to the edge of the elevator and hope that I don't say anything to them. Yeah, I noticed, because black men notice this. You know, we know what's going on. That is still going on. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how famous you are. I don't care how important you are. You know, we have more African American PhDs in this country than most of you can shake a stick at. That does not make them acceptable. We keep teaching the same stuff. That's why we keep getting the same result. So yes, reparations will help, but reparations is not the final answer. That's why, again, we can't keep arguing about reparations. It's about money. We want to have the discussion, not chase people out the damn door. I'm through.
All right, well, I just want to say this before I ask my question or make a comment. We have one announcement that's very important for us to hold up before. And I just want to thank you folks for just being so attentive and hanging in here with this very important discussion. But I would ask that after Dr. Warren responds to my statement, that you just stay for a minute longer. Janet will introduce the group that's here to make an ask of us. I think it's an ask. So, Dr. Horn, I believe that reparations has to come in many forms.
Okay.
And I have an older sister who is 79 who said, I don't need reparations in the form of education. I've got enough health benefits to cover me with health. I own my own house, but I sure could use some money, right? So I wanted to be clear that money is not off the table by any sense of the imagination. As Gina said earlier, that has to be part of the equation. But another thing that concerns me when we talk about reparations and we talk about what it may not look like, I want folks to be clear that we must have a say in who represents us at that table of 13 people, because for sure, this is something I'm for sure about. It cannot be the NAACP. It cannot be them. And not since the 50s have they been anything that has fought for black folks. If anything, what you see them doing is meeting with the president, number 45, to come up with some more nonsense that affects black folks. So, and then in terms of racism being here, there are some of us who are dedicating our entire lives to make sure that we do all that we can to fight back. So I don't want anybody leaving this room tonight thinking, well, racism just gonna be here. No, it's our duty. Isn't that what we say? It's our duty to fight back.
Actually, there is not much I can add to that. Now, I never said money was going to be off the table. What I said was money cannot be the focus of reparations. Reparations is not just about money, it's about respect. So now it'll be in the room, it'll be part of the discussion, and how it will work out, I don't know. But it will be part of the discussion. It just won't lead the discussion. We are all fighting reparations every day, but the most that we're going to get is to make things better. We're going to be able to find a few more converts every day. Racism, however, is as American as apple pie. Pumpkin pie, I guess, for a lot of you. But y'all got the joke. Anyway, we have to keep fighting. And we have to take our victories in the small doses that we're going to get. But it's not a lost cause. Nobody in this room is going to live to see it. See it finally ended. Maybe when the aliens come and we get the hell out of here. When you don't have us to kick around anymore, then you'll miss us. Then you'll say, what about black people? Why can I have what I want? Yeah, because we'll be gone. I'm working on getting dual citizenships for African Americans. So that when y'all act too crazy, we can get out of here. Things always change when you have another option. You might be able to beat me up and push me around. Because I can't go no place else. I can't be homeless out in the street. I can't do that. So I let you do to me what I should not. But when I have another place to go that is as good as where I am, things change. The other thing, and this will come. It's not coming tomorrow, but it's not coming next week, but it is coming. Economic boycotts work.
Yes.
We are trying to convince African Americans, and y'all can report me if y'all want, I don't care. But we are trying to convince African Americans to keep their money in their pocket for just one holiday season. Don't go to Walmart on Thanksgiving 2020 or 2019. Don't buy one Christmas present. Go outside and make one. We used to make our Christmas presents. Keep your money in your pocket. Black folk, don't spend any money in the community. We will change racism overnight. It won't end it, but it damn sure scare the hell out of everybody. We spend entirely too much in this country not to be missed. But we have not been able to convince black folk, don't spend your money. Hold it. Keep it. The stores will still be selling this stuff in January, just for November 25th to December 25th. Keep your money. If we have one big economic boycott, I can guarantee you this country will change in terms of the relationship that it has with African Americans. I'm through.
We say thank you.